Hi, my name is Chris, and the video that you're about to watch was originally a Skillshare class exclusively on that platform. However, recently I have decided maybe as an experiment it would be fun to just publish it in its entirety here on YouTube to also provide you with this value that you can watch this class in its entirety. All of the parts are here just exactly the same as they would be on Skillshare. Now, of course, if you want to jump around, the chapters are in the description below, and usually they also show up in the timeline for the YouTube player. Now, depending on your skill set and the class that you're watching, it may be really helpful to just jump around a little bit here and there so that you get the most content in the least amount of time possible. And of course, also don't forget that you can up the playback speed here on YouTube so that you can watch the class in maybe half the time and get through it a little bit more quickly and learn the same amount. If you want to watch this class on Skillshare itself, and of course also enjoy many other classes as well, you can of course also find a link down in the description. All of the things that are mentioned in this class, for example equipment as well as software services, are also linked in the description for you to click on. And one last disclaimer, these classes may have information that is no longer applicable because they have been produced in the last years, and so please keep that in mind as you are watching these classes. And with all that said, I hope this class is extremely helpful for you, and let's jump into it.
Are you sitting in front of your Mac a lot and you think there must be a way to do all kinds of tiny tasks a little bit faster, maybe stay a little bit more on the keyboard and achieve more with less movement? I would say you are correct. And the topic of this class, Alfred, the tool that I'm going to talk about, is one of the things that I think will give you that opportunity. Alfred is a productivity application with which you can access the web, search for files, contacts, pictures, and you can do a lot more things with the features inside. It is a free application in the base version. It also comes with a Powerpack. However, this class is mostly regarding the free version and it only will give you a little bit of a peek into the Powerpack features. The Powerpack class will be a separate class that I'm going to create here on Skillshare as well, so look out for that. Did I mention that on average, I personally use Alfred about 134 times per day, and since 2013 I have interacted with this application about 450,000 times. That is probably the most out of any application on my computer to this day. And that makes it so worth it. It's something that comes into your daily routine. It's something that you use every day without even thinking about it. And sometimes this is a bad thing, but you will actually miss Alfred when you work with a Mac that is not set up with your custom functionalities. This is why I think that this tool is such a powerful tool to start out with. Of course, there is to-do lists and all kinds of other applications, but this application, Alfred, is going to kind of like weave itself into your daily routine. It's going to weave itself into your life like nothing else. And like I said, 134 times is the average that I use Alfred every single day, and that's just insane to me. I'm so excited about this application and I would love for you to try it out as well and also become a little bit more productive in everyday tasks. To give you a little bit of an overview about this class, it's going to be a getting started guide. It's going to be about all the free features, and I'm going to give you a small peek into the Powerpack features as well so you can make an informed decision about whether or not you want to purchase the upgrade as well. Now, to get you started, in this class, we're going to download Alfred and start it for the first time. We're going to replace the Spotlight search shortcut with Alfred, because that makes much more sense. In my opinion, it's just a replacement for the Spotlight search altogether. However, don't worry, we'll also replace the shortcut for Spotlight, so you will still have access to that as well. Then we are going to set up a couple of standard settings and we are going to go over all the features that are available in the free version, so you can get started right away. We'll also get a couple of settings going to make it more minimalistic and beautiful looking with less intrusion. That is something that I'm really passionate about, to have something in a nice dark theme without any unnecessary bells and whistles. Lastly, we will also go over all the Powerpack features so you can make an informed decision whether or not you want to purchase the upgrade. And kind of like a hint from my side, I think it's definitely worth it. However, Alfred is a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, so you might want to just get started with the free version and then upgrade later. As I've mentioned before, I'm also going to create a class on the topic of the Powerpack and more specifically on the workflows that you will learn more about later. So stay tuned for this class as well if you're interested in all the Powerpack features and getting your bearing around those as well. Oh, and by the way, before I forget it, my name is Chris Spiegel, and I'm a creator at heart. I create photos, videos, and sometimes code. It is my passion to create these things. It's not my passion to be stuck on the minutia in between. So managing and navigating my Mac is one of the things that I like to improve and be more productive with so that I can get the real projects done faster. Kind of like look at it like the paperwork kind of stuff. Do you really want to kind of like go through folders to kind of like find your files, or do you want to just hit a couple of keystrokes and be right there with the file without even having to touch your mouse at all? I think that's really valuable, and that's why I created this class, to give you that information and overview so you can manage things better and faster, so you can get more done in your day or be done earlier. I know from my own experience that the Alfred feature set can be a bit overwhelming with all its keyboard shortcuts and hidden features that are not necessarily immediately visible. However, this is exactly the reason why I created this class, so you can get started slowly and then you can build up onto that as you go. You can also come back to this class if you, for example, forgot something, or you remember that I talked about a certain feature and you think now it's time to get into that feature and to kind of like understand it a little more. My personal pathway with Alfred was that I started using the free version, and over time I kind of like learned my bearing around that, and then I upgraded to the Powerpack, and as I started using the Powerpack, it became more and more obvious how valuable that was, even more so. And even now, to this day, every now and then I create a new workflow, I create a new keyboard shortcut or something like that inside of the Alfred environment, which helps me in everyday life with new tasks that come up every now and then. So it's really a tool that integrates into your life, as I've mentioned before. It's a wonderful application that will power a lot in your workday. I think the creators of Alfred said it best on their websites. Alfred is an award-winning app for macOS which boosts your efficiency with hotkeys, keywords, text expansion, and more. Search your Mac and the web and be more productive with custom actions to control your Mac. I think, in my own words, if I would have to kind of like transfer that over, Alfred just simply should be the default Spotlight search on any Mac there is. Spotlight search is something that has become more and more powerful over the years. However, Apple, in its normal way of doing things, never really gave us the power to customize what Spotlight can do. And this is where Alfred is completely different. Alfred, especially in the Powerpack, will let you customize anything. And the other things that are coming to mind to me are that Alfred is something that can search specific things individually, and that makes it incredibly fast. Whereas Spotlight, by default, always searches everything. It searches movies, Rotten Tomato, IMDb, weather. It also searches the maps at the same time as it searches for files, applications, contacts, and does calculations. In Alfred, you get to choose what you want to do, and thus the results are provided to you much, much faster. At least that has been my experience, and I am very happy with the ability to kind of like narrow down my search results the way that I am expecting them to be. You will learn much more about this inside of the class, and it will make more sense in terms of like what I mean around that as well. This class is a getting started guide for Alfred on Mac. This means that you will need a macOS operating system to use Alfred because it is a macOS application, and you will only need the free version. I am going into a couple of the Powerpack features and giving you an overview so you can make a better informed decision as to whether or not you want to do the upgrade, but all the feature sets that I'm describing in depth are in the free version. I also would like to disclose that I am not affiliated with the team behind Alfred. There's no affiliate codes in this class whatsoever, and I'm just an excited user that loves to use this application and would like to give you more in-depth knowledge about it and also get you started on how to use it in your daily flow. So when you're ready to get started to use your Mac more efficiently and supercharge your daily routine with faster search for files and on the web, then start this class and I will see you in the next segment. Well, to get started with Alfred, the first step obviously is to install the application. To do that, let's have a quick look at the website and then download the application, install it, and start it for the first time. Now, on the website, as I've mentioned before, there's this nice description of Alfred, and then you will find all kinds of features that they feature in the application. A little bit of a tricky thing here is that most of those things that are mentioned here in big letters or like in big segments are features that are only available in the Powerpack. For example, the snippets here, the automation, the music control, all of those things are specific to the Powerpack. The search and browse is one of the main things that is available in the free version as well. Now down here, you will find a lot of other things that Alfred supports, and many of these are actually available in the free version as well as in the Powerpack version. As you scroll through, you will find that there's a lot of features with default searches, quick looks, system commands, clipboard history, snippet expansion, large type, and all these other things. And I will go into detail of all of these things as we go through this class. Now, to download Alfred, we can just go down here in the bottom. There's the Alfred download for free. Now, I want to mention that Alfred is also available in the macOS App Store. However, the version that's available there is over 6 years old and it is not recommended to use that. Instead, you should go to the website like here and you download the application from there. It is Alfred 3 for macOS, and it is developer ID signed and notarized with the Apple workflow. So you can rest assured that it is official and is basically wrapped as if it were an app on the Mac Store. If you at some point decide to purchase the Powerpack, you can either do that from within the application or you can buy the Powerpack right here. And I would like to just let you know how much this would cost. In this case, the version 3 Powerpack single user license is £23. And you can convert that to whatever your currency is. The Mega Supporter is £39, and that's actually the upgrade that I made a couple of years ago. And since then, I just got any upgrades for free. So if you end up deciding to go for one of these licenses, just make sure to choose whichever feels right for you at the time. I'm sure that if the upgrade to Alfred number 4 will come anytime soon, they will also have a migration package or some kind of a deal where you have the license in a certain time frame already and stuff like that. But this is not the topic of this class because we're focusing on the free Alfred class, which is just the free one that you can download right here. So let's click that button and download the application. So once the download is finished, we can just open the DMG file. Obviously, it should be in our downloads folder. And once the verification process and stuff is through, we're just going to copy this into the applications folder. So once you have moved the file into the applications folder and you found it there, you can just double click it and either it will open up immediately or you have to double click it a second time. Now, as you can see on the screen, there's this nice search bar and also there's this little tiny hat in the menu bar that is available to you. This is basically all the interface is. It is this main search bar that is the whole feature set of Alfred. However, to look into all of the settings, there's two ways you can do that. You can either go onto the hat in the menu bar and click the Preferences button up there. You can also right-click on the search here and you can click on Preferences, or as I prefer and works in almost all applications in general, you can just hit Command and comma and it will open the feature preferences and all the preferences that you can do with Alfred on the screen. So once you're done with that, we can also eject the Alfred image file. You can either do that right there from this image with Command E, and you can just click those buttons, or the alternative is to open a new Finder window and go into the sidebar, here the little Alfred search image, and you can just eject that. I personally keep my downloads folder very clean, and I would also just delete the image file immediately because we have installed the application already. We can download it again from the internet if we need to do so, but for now we're done there. From here, we're going to go over all these different tabs up here, the settings that we can change, the features that are available in the free version, and at the end there will be the overview of the Powerpack features as well. That's in the next segment. The Alfred interface that you see every day is very minimal. It's simply this little search box that comes up to the screen when you hit the shortcut to open Alfred. The default shortcut is Alt spacebar. I personally prefer to set the shortcut to be the default Spotlight shortcut, so we are going to replace those in an upcoming video. But for now, it is Alt spacebar to open this, and this is basically everything that you get. It's very minimal, it's very simple, and there's also ways to change the design around and make it even more minimal. But in general, this is everything that you see on a daily basis. It's a simple search box, and it can do a lot of things. But we are going to go into the interface now, which has all the settings, which is much more blown up than the thing that you see on a daily basis. The daily basis, this thing, very minimal. The preferences, however, are very in-depth and very broad in general. I actually found that the screen for the preferences and everything, it is very explanatory in general because they have descriptions everywhere, so you can kind of understand what is going on. But in my own experience, it was still very overwhelming to go over all of those things at the first time. To get into the settings, there's a couple of different ways. One is you can click on the hat and you can click Preferences. The other one is you can right-click on this hat, or, as I've mentioned before, you can also just Command and comma, which will bring up the interface for the Preferences Alfred. This shortcut is actually something that you can remember for any other application out there, because most applications actually support this to open the preferences. So you can just hit Command, comma in any position of the application and you will open the preferences, whether that's in Photoshop or it's in Pages or any other app that you might have on your computer. Now, one more way to actually do this or to accomplish to opening these preferences is actually already inside of the search itself. So you can click here, so you can open the search again, and you can just hit and write preferences. And as you will see, there's a search result that shows Alfred preferences. And you can either hit Command 3 to jump to this and open it, or you can navigate with the clicking of the arrows up and down, and also you can use the mouse to navigate these search results. I probably would have done and hit Command and 3, and again, it opens the preferences of the Alfred application. Now, here we are on the general settings or general preferences screen, where you can decide to launch it on login. You can also change the Alfred hotkey, which we are going to do in another video, and you can tell it where you are. This is the international setting because I travel a lot and generally I want either the .com or like whatever the most international version of the website is. Sometimes it also just redirects me to the one where I am in the country that I am. We're going to make all these adjustments in another video because to actually change the Alfred hotkey, we will also have to go into the system settings to, for example, remap the Spotlight search hotkey. Otherwise, both of these applications will happen together, or you cannot choose the hotkey because it's already used by another system shortcut and stuff like that. So we're going to do that in a separate segment shortly. Now, what you will also find on the screen is the Alfred newsletter. If you want to sign up for that, you can enter your email and click subscribe. You can also download the Alfred Remote app, which is not necessarily something that I recommend a lot, but that's also a different video in itself. The features area is the area where Alfred default features are managed. This is where most of the things are done with the file search, web search, like all of these things. And we're also going to go in depth with all of these different things in different videos. Now, many of these features are available in the free version. Some of them are only available in the Powerpack, and some of them are slightly reduced in the free version, and in the Powerpack they are more powerful. But as I've mentioned before, even in the free version, this is already really, really powerful. And I want to let you know that this application that I use right now here is actually deactivated and the Powerpack is not activated. So you see what you get with the free version and not with like already being in the Powerpack and expecting that something will work, but it doesn't. This is the free version without activation. So it has all the features that are only in the free version and not in the Powerpack. Now, if we go to the next area, which is the workflows, you will notice that this is a pure Powerpack feature. This is something that I will actually go into depth in a different course completely because it is something that is so powerful that it is valuable to make its own course about this. The reason why this is so powerful is because you can do all kinds of custom things, and that means you can code stuff, you can download other people's workflows, and you can do so much with this that it's insane and it's incredibly powerful, but it is not available in the free version of Alfred, and it's not a topic of this class specifically. The next tab that we will see here above is the appearance. In this appearance screen, you can change the appearance of the Alfred search window. And that's really cool because it gives you the ability to make it a little darker, for example, or just more minimalistic in general. And we're going to talk about that as well. The advanced settings as you might have guessed, is about a couple of the advanced things that you can do here. You can change how certain things react, how certain keyboard shortcuts work, how to work with the history, and also you can rebuild the metadata cache and like stuff like that. It's something that is probably the least important screen on this application, and it's something that I usually don't change a lot of. The remote for Alfred is an iOS application that I mentioned before I'm not necessarily very fond of. I'm going to talk about what is possible with this application, and this screen here you have for the settings of the remote application. Then on the right hand side we have the Powerpack. In this case, as you can see, you can buy the Powerpack, you can upgrade if you have a version 2 license, and you can also activate a Powerpack if you already have a license key. That's just very simply what you can do there. The usage screen is something that is very fun. It shows you how much you use the Alfred features, or like the different features of Alfred, how much you use expansion and iTunes remote and hotkeys and all these things. And as you can see, I bought a new computer last year, so this statistic is sadly lost in the process because I actually have been using Alfred for much longer than the last year. But alone in this last year, I used it 35,000 times, and in this case, on average, 87 times per day. In the past, I'm not sure why this went lower. In the past, it was much higher. As I've mentioned in the intro of this class, I had this number be 134 for some time, which is quite insane, but maybe I changed my use of how I'm interacting or how much I'm actually spending time on my computer. Now, on this screen, you can also tweet your statistics, which is just like, it's a gimmick. It's not necessarily that amazing, but it gives me a feel of how valuable this application has been to me over time. Then we have the Help tab, which obviously you can report a bug, you can get help, you can email the people, or use the forum, which is really powerful. And there's a lot of people there that know a lot. And then, last but not least, you can update Alfred. You can decide whether or not you want the pre-release version, and you can look at the full changelog on the website. And if you have a new version, then you would have a button right here to be able to upgrade and restart Alfred. Now that we know our bearings in the interface, let's get to the first task, which will be to replace Spotlight with the Alfred search. Now let's get started with replacing the Spotlight search with the Alfred search. By default, you can access the Spotlight search either with this little magnifying icon in the top right corner of your screen, or with the shortcut Command and Spacebar. Now, I already have disabled this shortcut, but I'm going to show you how you can do that and remap it, because that's exactly what we need to do to be able to map Alfred to that shortcut. So what we want to be doing is, in this case, we are going to use Alfred to actually achieve this. We're going to open Alfred, the search, with Alt and Spacebar, in this case because we still have it on that shortcut. So once we have Alfred open, we can do actually two things here. We can either just enter System Preferences, and we open the System Preferences that way, and this way you can see we open that Systems Preferences window. But I already know that we want to go into the keyboard settings of the Systems Preferences, and those are actually available just by typing keyboard, and you will find the preferences pane for that. And if I hit enter now, as you can see now, we immediately enter the keyboard preferences and we don't have to navigate anymore. Here, we can actually click on the shortcuts, and inside of the shortcuts, you will find that there's one that is called Spotlight. And here you see the Show Spotlight Search is actually disabled. I personally never use it, or if I need to use it, I just click the little magnifying glass at the top right. However, if you want to keep this and you want to just remap it to something different, you can actually double click this and, for example, make it the Alt and Space. So in this case, now we have Alt Space set up to be the Spotlight search and the Alfred hotkey. So now what we can do if we hit this, as you notice, we kind of like switch back and forth between them both, and that's annoying. So that's not the result that we were looking for. What we were looking for is we want the Show Spotlight search to be Command and Space, and then on the Alfred window, we can actually click into the Alfred hotkey window right here, and we click and hold Command, and then we hit the spacebar. And as you can see, we now have remapped the Alfred hotkey to Command and Spacebar. So if I hit Command spacebar now, it opens the Alfred window, and if I hit Alt and spacebar, it opens the search spotlight window. Personally, I would again disable this completely because I never really use it, and I'm going to leave it like that, but you can choose yourself whether or not you want to have Spotlight Search accessible with the keyboard shortcut, or if it's enough to just click the Spotlight Search in the menu bar and have Alfred to do everything else for you. Now that we have set up the default shortcut for Alfred, the other thing that I would definitely recommend is launch Alfred at login. This is kind of obvious because we want this accessible at all times, ready to go as soon as our computer is started up. The last thing that is on this screen is the where are you? The international setting is something that is intended for people that are kind of like traveling and changing countries all the time. That is exactly what I usually am doing, so I always leave it right there. But if you are in any of these mentioned countries down here, let's just set it to the one that fits the best to you, or if you are traveling a lot, just set it to international. Now that we have set up Alfred to be the default search replacement for the Spotlight, we set it up to launch automatically and we told it where you are. Let's go into the file handling and like the first and most important shortcuts to kind of like get used to what Alfred can accomplish and how the interface actually works before we dive into all the different settings that we can make and before we start learning about all the ins and outs of different application features and functionalities. So let's get into the next video where we learn about how to handle the more general things around Alfred. So let's talk about the general handling of Alfred and what the different functionalities are that are already available to us without going deeper into the different settings, and also how to restart the application, how to go into the preferences and stuff like that. As a default, Alfred offers this little hat up top in the menu bar. There's just 3 things that you can do there, and I personally prefer my menu bar to be very minimalistic, so I will show you in the upcoming videos how to hide this hat and not have it visible at all. However, if you want to keep it there, you can check for updates, you can go into the preferences, and you can also toggle the Alfred without hitting the spacebar or like the command spacebar thing that we just set up. However, I just prefer to do it with the spacebar, the command spacebar, and that's already the first thing that we can do here is command spacebar, and it opens up this nice application window to search for things, to do calculations and other stuff. So one thing I've mentioned before is you can hit Command and comma and it will open the preferences window. Here you can also quit Alfred. However, there's one struggle that you have when you want to quit Alfred from here, which is how do you open it again easily? Now you can either quit it and then you can use the Spotlight search to search for the Alfred application, and you can hit enter and then it opens again. However, we want to be using Alfred itself to reopen Alfred, so we can kind of like restart it. The way we would do that is we open Alfred, we hit spacebar a second time, which is a specific command to search for only files and applications. Then we can enter Alfred, and as you can see, we will find the Alfred 3 app here. And if we hold down Command, it will change the line below the app and it says Refill in Finder. With that, we can hit enter while holding Command, and it actually will open a Finder window and it will select the application right there. Now, what we can do is we can hit quit Alfred and it ends the application. If I hit Command spacebar now, nothing happens, but we can just double click here and it will open Alfred. We can close the window and we can have Alfred accessible again. And this is how I like to restart Alfred whenever I see the need for it, to kind of like just refill it in the Finder, have it accessible immediately after I quit it, and then just double click or command and hit the down arrow, which also opens an application again. Now this is more of an edge case, right? To kind of like want to restart an application that's supposed to be running anyways all the time. And if you restart your computer every now and then, you shouldn't really run into this issue much. But we were kind of like talking about a couple of things that are already really valuable in Alfred, which is you can search for files individually from the normal search, and you can also reveal files in the Finder to kind of like just give you an idea of what even is possible. Now, I would like to show you a couple of things that are possible here. One thing is, for example, we can just search for applications, and those are immediately available in the normal search. But what you will notice is, for example, that I don't have access to the Alfred app, but if I want to search for Photoshop, I could use that and be there and open Photoshop immediately. Also Photo Booth, or if I wanted to launch Pages, for example, I could do that. And like all of those things are really easily accessible. And the default search usually searches for applications, it searches for contacts. You can do calculations, like for example, 13 times 12 if you want to do that. Or you can search for example, my own contact details. And those are the default functionalities. And as you can see, it's snappy fast. It's really, really fast. But what if you wanted to search for a file? And that's something that I showed just a second ago for restarting applications. If you just hit spacebar once you have the search window open, or you can also hit the single upper quotation mark, but let's face it, hitting the spacebar when you already had command space and then you just hit spacebar again without having command held, this opens the file search or the file to like open files and stuff like that. The thing that you can do here is, for example, you can search for, again, applications, but it also searches for folders. So let's say I want something like the Alfred getting started. This, in my case, is a file that is the icon or like the work in progress that I've been working on to get started with the Alfred, and I made a little bit of a cover photo for this course. So now what I can do here is I can actually hit Shift, and it would open the preview that we are used to from macOS. It doesn't work with spacebar because the spacebar obviously just adds a new item in the search. And also if you just type something with the Shift, it doesn't do the same thing. But if you hit Shift, and it opens the preview of the file that you have selected. The other things about this interface here are that you can use the modifier keys. So if you control click here, or like you control hold, then you will see below the title of the file that it would search for Alfred getting started with the default fallback. This default fallback can be probably set up as Google. This is my default fallback, but it can be set to pretty much anything you want. The next thing is if you hold Alt. The Alt key, as you can see, it would make the search with spotlights. So if I were to now click the Enter key while holding the Alt key, it opens a Finder window and it makes a standard search with the macOS Spotlight search. Let's just close this again, open Alfred, and here we go for another nice feature. Now I opened the Alfred window again and my search is gone, but maybe I just needed another try or need to do the same search again. What I can do here is I can just hit the arrow up key, and as you can see, I'm immediately brought back to the same search from before. It actually works with that again, like I can do that multiple times. And as I've also talked about before, if I now hold the command key, I will actually be able to reveal the file that I've selected in the Finder. So if I do that here, it actually opens the folder which has this file. And as you can see here, it's in my Finder, it's in my iCloud drive. And if I hit spacebar again, it will show the preview as we are used to. Now, as you probably see on the screen, the first search result is by default, it is selected. So if you just hit enter, it opens that file in whatever default application you have assigned to this file type. So for me, if I have a JPEG file, if I hit enter, it opens preview and I can close that again. Now, what you can also do is you can also just hit the numbers on the right side, which in this case, if I wanted to open the PSD now, it's the number 2. So if I hit Command 2, it would select that file, or I can navigate to it with my arrow keys, or I can also navigate to it with my mouse. One thing that is important to mention here, and you probably already noticed this, that the order of things changed in between the use cases. And this is because I used the Alfred getting started image, the JPEG, more than a PSD. So the search engine internally actually remembers which files you preferred, and then it puts them higher up. This is sometimes a little bit annoying because you might have gotten too used to using the command 1 to reach a certain search result. But it is actually quite helpful because the tendency is that you will end up having the right file to begin with and number 1. And then you can choose the other ones accordingly. Another extremely powerful feature here in Alfred is that you can just enter anything you'd like, and you can either find something with the web and the fallback searches that are offered, or you can enter a URL to actually access that website. So for example, if you copy a link from an email and it is not a link and you have to open your browser and then you can like enter the link, you can actually just Command spacebar, paste your link, and then you can hit enter. Because let's say if I were to go to my own website and I don't have it copied right now, I enter chrisspiegel.com, and as you can see, it automatically recognized that it is a website, and I can now open the typed URL. As you can see, some of the modifier keys actually still work. So Control would make a search with a default fallback search. So Alt would automatically search in the spotlight, and the command doesn't work because you can't reveal websites. But other things that I can do here are, for example, that if I wanted to search something with Google or Amazon, right? Let's say I wanted to search for alternatives for Alfred. Let's type that in there. Alternative. And as you can see, the default fallback, if Alfred does not find anything on the system, it would give you the options to search with Google, Amazon, or Wikipedia. These are the search options that are available in the free version, and we will go into the settings as well, and you can see that you can make certain adjustments here. If by default you just want to search Google, for example, you can also just type Google and then your search term. And then you can search this inside of Google. We will talk about how to make these shorter, because I personally would just want to be able to say G and then alternative or something like that. You can also use something like translate, and then you have something and type it in there, which would do a Google Translate for you. But again, very cumbersome to write translate and then be able to use that. So now you got a little bit of an overview. You can just search for applications here. You can also just search for files with the command space and then again the space bar to only search for files, folders, and stuff like that. You can do calculations, and you can also restart Alfred, and you can reach the web by just entering a URL or a search term and use the fallback search for a Google search. In the next segment, we will look into the features that you can configure and also how those things impact what you can do, how it works, how you can use keywords to more specifically search for specific things, and anything else that is possible with Alfred. Alfred features a ton of functionality already in the free version, and we're going to go over all of these things in this segment of the class, where we are talking about all the different features individually, one after another. We're also going to talk about how you can change the design of Alfred in small ways to make it more minimalistic and beautiful. We're also going to change some of the standard search parameters so they're faster to enter, and you don't have to type Google or Amazon to actually do an Amazon search, but instead you can use G or A. So that should give you an ability to work faster with all of the things that Alfred provides. And let's get into the segment of the feature overview. To get into the feature overview, we're going to open Alfred with Command spacebar, and then we are going to open the application preferences with Command comma. Once we are there, we click the features button up here. And here you're greeted with the default results, and then you have a sidebar which offers all kinds of different features that you can configure and also learn more about how they actually work. Because as you can see even here, there's a lot that you can learn from the different descriptions that are below the different settings, and it actually is quite explanatory. This first default search results window gives you exactly that. It's the default search results with no modifiers and no specific keywords in the beginning. So by default, as you can see, it is applications, preferences, and contacts that are listed here. And then you can also choose to make folders, text files, documents, and other things available here. But the note down here specifies that for performance reasons, it would be better to only make the essentials available for search. This has to do with the fact that while searching through things, Alfred needs a certain amount of calculating power, and to search through thousands and thousands and thousands of files is much more work than to just limit it to a few things like contacts, applications, and preferences. I personally would recommend to kind of like just leave that as it is. And as I've mentioned before in the general file handling or the general handling of Alfred, if you just open Alfred and hit spacebar, you get the file search anyways. So this whole thing for folders, text files, archives, documents, and stuff like that, that is immediately accessible by just hitting spacebar once the window for Alfred is open. So I don't think that it's necessary to add these extras. However, if you decide differently, you can check it out and see how it performs and maybe make a different choice later, or it just works enough or good enough for you. Now, as they are mentioning here, this is unintelligent. Searching for all file types, again, would just be crazy to search everything every single time. That takes away the snappiness of Alfred, and it kind of like defeats the purpose of having the different search scopes that are available inside Alfred. And then it just becomes another Spotlight, which is, as I've noticed, quite slow. Lower in the settings screen, you can also see the search scope. This actually has an impact on everything else as well. So if you want to find files or you want to find folders, the folder needs to be in here. Or also if you want to search for things on external hard drives, they need to be in here as well. By default, these are the ones that are available here. And as you can see down here at the right bottom, you will find that it also includes the home folder, excluding the library folder. So if you want to be able to search the library folder, you can add it specifically here with this little plus up there. Or you can just open it in the Finder, and then you can just drag and drop the folder or the external drive into this list, and it will be added to the search scope. Adding too many things to the search scope, for example, if you just add the hard drive itself that your Mac comes with, then again, you are blowing up how much search has to happen in the background. It makes it a little slower, and limiting it to the places that you actually store the files that you personally work with is really, really good. So in my case, I tend to just leave it as it is by default. I sometimes add the library folder, but in general, it's a smart idea to just add the specific library things that you want to add anyways, and not the whole folder, because there's a lot of caching stuff in there. It's not really necessary. And I sometimes have external hard drives that I add here as well, because I work with them a lot. The last thing that you have down here is that you can decide whether or not you want to show the fallback search always intelligently, or you want to only show it if there's nothing else possible. I tend to set it to only show fallback when there's no other results, and you can also have more settings with this in the Powerpack because it is something that they limit. So the default searches, the 3 ones that are available, Google, Amazon, and Wikipedia, those are by default, and then you can make new settings if you have the Powerpack. But now let's get into more detail with the File Search tab and see how we can actually manipulate the search results and find what we are looking for. The File Search area here gives you a lot of specifics about what you want to find and how to get there. So there's a lot of modifier keywords that you can use to specifically search for special things. In the standard setup, you can see here that there's this quick search, which I already talked about, which is basically opening Alfred and then letting go of the command key but hitting the spacebar again. This is actually the enable quick file search mode, which immediately opens this mode where you can only search for files, folders, and other things. On this screen here, you can also configure other parameters and keywords that you can use to do specific searches. For example, you can search for opening files by just entering open in front of the file that you want to open. You can find files, revealing them in the Finder. However, again, something that already works by just hitting the command and then enter, or command and click, which is the reveal file. And to kind of demonstrate that, if I go here and I say open, and then Alfred getting started, then we have the file here, and if I were to hit enter, it would open this file. If I hold my command key down, it would say reveal in Finder, and that basically is the same as saying find. Now, if I change the keyword here and I would type find, then it should find the file in the Finder as it should, and it does not open the file. Personally, I never really use either of these two. I just use the spacebar and then I just search for the files. If you want to use these, I would recommend shortening the words, because find and open are unnecessary keywords because you can just put F or O and that's done. You can do that by just changing the keyword here, and then that's simple. As I mentioned, you can do both of these things very easily with the quick search mode and the modifier keys, so I don't need those. The other things that are available here is that you can search inside of files. So with this you can actually search for specific things inside of PDF documents, names, quotes, text elements, and stuff like that. Again, it's something that I don't necessarily use a whole lot because I tend to remember the file names that I'm searching for. This is something that also searches a lot more information because it searches inside of files and not just the file names, so it can be a little bit slower and more inaccurate. The results are a little bit unpredictable in my taste, but it can be very powerful if you work a lot with any kind of PDF documents or other files that you want to search the contents of. The tags thing does the same thing. It searches for all things tags. So if you tag a lot of files, you might want to use that. Again, something that I don't necessarily use a whole lot. The don't show section is actually very, very powerful because you can by default exclude emails, contacts, calendar, bookmarks, and stuff like that. This is interesting because in the system, these things, the emails, for example, if you use the Apple Mail, are all files, each and every single email. Again, this is something that makes the search a lot more inefficient if you have to search through a lot of files. But if you want to include emails in your search because you use the Apple Mail system and you want to be able to search for all of that, then it may make sense to actually activate this. Bookmarks are a different story, contacts as well. Contacts are by default in the search results, so you don't really need those in the file search. It would just be a little bit confusing. The bookmarks are also something that works by default with Alfred already, so making these available in the search for files also not necessarily recommended. For some time, I also excluded other things like images or music, but since streaming has become so popular, I don't really use that anymore. And the same thing for images. My images are stored on external hard drives that are not necessarily indexed, so this is no longer an issue. And if you exclude images, and for example, we do this search that I've done before, where the Alfred getting started, as you can see, the PSD file as well as the JPEG file are no longer available, and that's not what we want. We want those things available. Then down here, we can rate limit the results. So we can say we want 20, 40, or however many we want. I tend to just use either the longest or the shortest. It's something that sometimes is useful if you're looking more in a fuzzy kind of way and you want to kind of see if there's more results. But as you can see down here, fewer results gives you more performance. And so that's always a good thing. And last but not least, we also have this bar up here for a couple other tabs. Navigation is something that's only in the Powerpack, the buffer as well, but preview is something that actually works quite nicely even in the free version. So in this case, again, if we go to this picture example, Quick Look can be opened with Shift. So we just hit Shift and it opens this up. And once this is open, we can actually use Shift again to close it, but we can also just hit the spacebar and does the same thing. This is actually the standard macOS Quick Look, and you can just access it with the Shift key because spacebar is just a normal space in a search field. Alternatively, you can also use Command and Y, but why would you use 2 keystrokes if you can just use 1? And then we have a couple more things here to like no previews in or no previews for. This might be useful if you use some kind of rich previews that are taking a lot of render power. I have never really used this because I tend to just work with the files that I have, and the only things that come to mind for this is, for example, photos that are raw files that you don't want to render for previews. But other than that, I just leave those things empty. The actions, again, Powerpack feature. And then on the advanced thingy here, you can also look through these, and if you want to open Apple Script or you want to run Apple Scripts, you kind of like want to touch folders or not. These are really advanced features, and they're not really something that I would change, and I would just use them as they are. Now, we already have wrapped up the file search, and I hope this is already something that will be really useful for you to kind of like get your hands dirty and be able to specifically search for files and also use the preview to kind of like find them and see if you're having the right file there. The next area we are going to go into is the web search, which is really powerful to reach the web very quickly and do searches without opening the browser first. The web search feature in Alfred quickly became one of my favorite features of all times at the time when I first started using Alfred, even though I realized later that I could also use web bookmarks for what I was doing. What you can do here specifically is you can set up search keywords that you can search for on different websites with different keywords. There's a handful of things that are really, really powerful here. The first thing, of course, is, for example, Google. Google is also a fallback search, but if you want to specifically just Google something straight away, you can just type Google and then whatever you want to search for, alternative, whatever. And then it would Google that. Now, what we can also do, and if you go through this list and you look here, you can also DuckDuck, for example. You can use DuckDuckGo. You can use Yahoo. So as you can see, there's a lot of alternative searches that you have here, and you can also open things just by default. So for example, if I enter Gmail, I would open Gmail, and I can also search my Gmail for a certain search term. However, the most annoying thing here for me was that these things are sometimes really, really long. So Google, I don't want to type Google, I just want to type G, and that's enough. If I want to open images search, I want to enter I. If I want to open translate, I want to just enter T. I want to open Amazon, I want to enter A. IMDb is the one that I leave, like IMDb, and then the rest. This kind of depends on how you use your Mac or how you use search engines. If you prefer DuckDuckGo, you might want to set up DuckDuckGo as D. If you search for YouTube a lot, you might want to set up YouTube as Y, and so on. Now, if you want to set up a custom search like this, you can actually do that by just adding a custom search. So if you click here, you will find that you can enter the search URL. And then when you enter the URL, you can use the query with these brackets on left and right, the curly brackets, that you can use those to actually make a search request. So let's pretend my website would have a search. It would be https://chrisspiegel.com. And then I would, for example, say /search q equals and then query. And this would actually then open my website with the search query. However, if you just want to make a shortcut for your own website, for example, in this case, my website would be this. I want to have it say Chris Spiegel and website. And then the keyword should be CS, for example. So this is already set up, and I could also set an icon by just dragging and dropping an image right here. I'm going to leave this empty for now and just hit save. Now what happens if I open this and I click CS, you can see that there is Chris Spiegel website, and if I hit enter right here, it actually opens my website. This is something that I used a lot in the beginning of using Alfred. I made shortcuts for pretty much anything. The Trello boards I was using, the websites I was opening a lot. The YouTube interface was one that I used it a lot with as well. For example, to go into the video manager, to go into the analytics and stuff like that. However, since then, I found out that it is kind of more useful to use the web bookmarks to do that and not clutter the searches here. So this is very useful. It is something where you can do a lot with by either entering no query to kind of like make this as a bookmark and just open websites, open certain links very, very fastly. Or you can make this a really powerful search to kind of like just one key search on a specific website. So you don't have to, let's say, open Chrome and then go to Google, right? And like enter your search term right there. I've seen way too many do that. And that is not really something that I want to be advertising. So overall, this very powerful, and you can utilitize it, customize it, however you like. The other thing that you can do on this screen is that you can enable or disable certain search results or keywords. And I think that's quite powerful if you want to disable, for example, Yahoo because you never use Yahoo, or you want to never use Google, so you disable that. The last thing on this one is that there's this URLs and history. Generally, this is more of a Powerpack feature because if you open Alfred and you enter a website like google.com, it would open this on the website. And this is actually the setting recognize URLs in Alfred main window. I would keep this definitely on and then just use it. And in the Powerpack, what happens is that it actually remembers those URLs for you, so you can just search for the URLs that you have entered into Alfred or you have opened through Alfred. That is really powerful, but again, only a Powerpack feature. The next one, as I've mentioned, the web bookmarks are kind of similar to this, but they don't have the feature set of the query. So you don't have the ability to make a custom search with the web bookmarks, but you can search through the Safari or Google Chrome bookmarks that you have set up. And that's really powerful, but that's in the next video. So next up, we have the web bookmarks. These bookmarks are kind of similar to this web searches that we had before, but they don't support the query string, so you cannot do the searches with this. However, it is something that I found in the long run, finally, a little bit more, a little simpler to actually make new bookmarks and to use them more easily. The settings on the screen, let's talk about those first. First and for all, you can activate or deactivate the different browsers that you use. I use Google Chrome as my main bookmarks and also my main browser, so I selected this one. The other fun thing is that you can actually select which of the browser profiles you want to be using. I have set up this one, so I'm going to use that. Then you can make a decision whether or not to include these bookmarks in the search result by default, or if you want to use a keyword. I use the default search and I just use keywords inside of the bookmark titles. And then you have the last setting, which is quite helpful if you use Safari and Google Chrome. You can actually say which of the browsers should be used. So whether it should use the default browser, in my case Google Chrome, or you could also set it to the bookmark source browser. So if you use Safari and Google Chrome and you search for either one of those bookmarks, depending on where the bookmark is found, whether it's in Safari bookmarks or it's in Chrome bookmarks, it would open the browser specifically to the bookmark. I prefer to leave it at the default browser because I basically only use Google Chrome and never Safari. To kind of like show how this actually works, we have to open Chrome. So Command and spacebar and search for Chrome. Open the website, and let's say I want to make a bookmark for my own website. So once you have the website loaded, what you can do here is click the little star icon at the top right, or you go into the menu bar and say bookmark this page. You can also use the command code Command and D, and it would be the same thing as clicking the star icon. Here you can change the title. For me personally, I like to make something specific for this bookmark, especially if I intend to use it with Alfred. So let's say I would make this CSW for my website. Then you can set up the folder. I tend to have a specific folder for my Alfred keywords, and it either stays inside the bookmarks bar or I want to move it somewhere else, but this is fine for now. So I save it, and what you will notice is that it tends to take a couple of seconds for this search result to actually show up. But if I search for CSW, you can see that it actually searches for this bookmark and it titles it and it opens it if I want to in a new tab. The fun thing here is also that I can search for anything in the title. So if my title, for example, is brand building, it also finds that. So in general, this search for bookmarks is very helpful and it is very useful because you can set up all kinds of bookmarks. One thing that I, for example, would do is the things that I do a lot. So for example, if you have a podcast and you upload new episodes every now and then, or you want to open the statistics of your Google Analytics account, those things can all be bookmarked. And if you make nice short keywords at the beginning, you can find those very easily with Alfred, and you can use the web bookmarks to do so. From here on, we're going to dive into the calculations feature of Alfred, away from the browsers, away from the bookmarks, and just to the math. By default, Alfred offers a very nice calculator inside of the Alfred search. So if you just open Alfred and you enter any number combination and you want to do some kind of calculation, then you can just do those things. It is very simple and it's right there. It's super useful, and the fun thing here is if you hit enter, it actually copies the result. So this brings your result into the clipboard and you can use it wherever you want. Now, to make more in-depth calculations, you can also hit the equal sign, and then you will find that the calculator actually supports more things. So one example would be you can do a sin of 90, which is 0.89 something, and then you can calculate that times 2. So this is really powerful. You can also use the log of 2 to do more things. This is really, really cool. And you can see down here what kind of functionality it actually supports. And if you use a lot of math and also use a lot of math on the go, this might be something that is really powerful. Same thing applies if you hit enter. The result is actually in the clipboard history like so. Now, the interesting thing here is that depending on where you live and how you work with numbers, you can actually decide which setting you want to use for the comma or the semicolon or the decimal point. The interesting thing about these two is that you can actually make a decision whether or not you want to do those things for the input or the output. So if you want, for example, the output always with comma as a decimal separator, you can set that, and you can set the input with a decimal point and comma as a decimal separator so that it understands both ways. This actually is something that is quite interesting because it is more powerful to be able to use numbers from wherever they are coming from, whether they have a comma or a decimal point. It's really useful to maybe set that, and it's something that I might be starting to use. So lastly, I set this one to the macOS default, so it's always standardized. The calculator inside of Alfred is a really neat feature, and it is something that is quite powerful if you want to use the more powerful calculations with the sin, round, and all these other functionalities. And of course, the copying of the result is something that I use a lot because it comes just like that into other ways. If I want to send an email with a cost that is a sum total or something like that, I can just do that very simply by calculating these things. And something that I do a lot is that I calculate percentages. So for example, I want 5% of something or so. I just do those calculations like so. And in this case, let's say 20, and 5% of that would be 1. I think the calculator in Alfred is a really nice and powerful feature. It's something that kind of hides away and it just becomes useful whenever you need it. Now, after we've talked about the calculator, we are going to look into the dictionary. Honestly, the dictionary is probably one of the features that I use the least. One of the reasons why I think that is because we have Google, and Google pretty much does all of these things very, very simply. And by just searching for the word on Google, I will get the definition and I also get the spelling correction. And Google is probably one of those search engines that gets used a lot for other things than just search. In my case, I use Google search a lot for translating things. I use it a lot for having spell corrections. So if I just type a word and I send it into Google, it will tell me, did you mean? And stuff like that. But if you don't have internet all the time, or you don't want to use Google for these things, and you want to use the internal dictionary from macOS, you can actually just type define or spell. So let's spell hello with one L. It would tell me hello would be with two L. And also the same would be if I write life or like love. And it would tell me, okay, life is this one and love is this one. And now if I hit enter on any of these words, it actually would just copy the word into the clipboard history so I can paste it wherever I need it. One of the ways that you can also use this is with this paste on word action. So if you open a text editor and I would, for example, have, I type love with a wrong F, I copy it, I open this and I say spell, and then I have this and I say, okay, love, and I hit enter, it would automatically replace what I just selected. If I just do the same thing again and I enter now, it would insert it. So if I don't select something and do the action, then it would insert. If I have something selected, it would actually overwrite. I think that's a nice way to kind of like be a little bit quicker, not have to copy and paste things and stuff like that. But if you just want to copy it, you can also just do that. So if you just have paste on word action deactivated. The other thing that you can do is define, for example, love. Then you can open the definition of it. So now the dictionary of macOS would open and it would actually show me the definition of this. And then I obviously can also go into the different ways of translations that are available from the dictionary here. Again, something that I don't really use that much. It's also something that you can, again, remap. For example, you can just say D for define or S for spell. That might be something that is really helpful if you use it a lot to not have to type it all the way. So now that we have talked about the dictionary, we're going over to the contacts. As you can see on the screen, the contacts are actually a mostly Powerpack feature. However, you can already search for your contacts in the default search. So for example, if I were to search for my own name, Chris Spiegel, and this way I can actually find my contact info as it is stored in the Contacts app. And if I hit enter, it actually opens the Contacts app and shows me that info. The Powerpack version of this is much more powerful. You can see the details, you can copy an email address or phone number and stuff like that, which makes it a little more appealing. But it is already something that is a little bit nicer in the free version because you don't have to open the Contacts app and then search for your contact. You can just search for the contact right away. Now from here, we are actually jumping a couple of these settings because the clipboard, the snippets, the iTunes player, and the 1Password are all things that are only available in the Powerpack. The other thing that's only available in the Powerpack is a terminal and shell. But what we want to talk about now is the systems commands. This is actually quite nice and useful. However, I do disable a lot of them. This is actually really nice and helpful because you can do all kinds of system commands with a couple of keystrokes. For example, you can show the trash by just entering trash. You can also log out, or you can make the computer sleep, or just the display sleep. You can also restart your computer. You can shut down, and all kinds of other things. Personally, my settings here are as follows. I deactivate volume up and volume down because that's way too many words to actually make sense to type. I don't need mute because all of those things are already on the keyboard. I never really use the show trash or empty trash. I just do those on the trash can. And also these down here, the hide, quit, force quit, and quit all, I don't really use those either because they are already keyboard shortcuts like Command Q, Command W, and Command H. I don't really want to use those many. But what I use a lot is these others that are up here. I usually shut down or restart my computer with Alfred. I never really go into the Apple menu and click the shutdown button or something like that. I just use these system commands. The other thing that is really nice here is that you can eject mounted volumes. And with this eject, you can just eject. And of course, right now, there's no local volumes available. But you can see here, there's all kinds of settings. Again, removable media would be pretty much anything. Local mounted volumes would be anything that's not a server volume, and mounts in volumes is something that would include everything that is mounted into the volumes folder. I usually have it at local mounted volumes, and then down here what you also have is a eject all. This is something that is very powerful, especially if your Mac is a portable Mac, for example a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air, and you have something as an external hard drive. You just want to eject whatever is in there. In this case, you can make a blacklist of things that you don't want to eject. For example, if you use Google Drive file stream, you have a mounted drive, which is Google Drive file stream, but it's actually mounted through the web and it's not a local drive. But you can add it here by just dragging and dropping that file or like that drive in this blacklist, or you can hit enter and you can name the volume name. So you don't want to eject that volume when you eject all. I actually use that setting a lot with this little tiny SSD drive because it is Velcro, and I actually Velcro it to the back of my computer and then I plug it in. And what that means is that I don't actually want to eject it when I want to eject everything, because this just stays on my computer whenever I need, and I want it not to be ejected. But on the other hand, if I have bigger drives, for example, a 3.5-inch couple terabytes drive for backup storage or something like that, I want to eject all of those so I can carry away my computer from my desk with the safety that everything is ejected. So these are the system commands. You can make your own choices. Again, you can obviously shorten the shortcuts. You can also make them confirm. So for example, if I say sleep and hit enter, it would actually ask me if I want to do that. And obviously I don't want to do that right now because it wouldn't be that great for the screencast. But these system commands can be really helpful, and just a little nice gimmick somewhere in between that you don't have to use the mouse to restart your computer, for example. Now let's go into the last menu point, which is the large type. This large type setting is something that I love to do whenever I have to tell someone a phone number or they want to write something off my screen. It's quite simple because what you can do here is you can write whatever you want. Hello, my name is Chris. And then you can enter Command L and it would show up on the screen in large type, which kind of makes sense based on the name, right? Now, the settings that you have here are a couple. This is, for example, you can say fill the screen, which is what I want it to do usually, because this is what it looks like. It just fills the whole screen, makes everything dark, and just writes the name. This is exactly what I use it as. And then you can make auto hide Alfred, and you can also make it appear on whatever screen the mouse is. I like to use the auto hide because that means that Alfred itself gets hidden and it's not obstructing the background. And I also like to use the system font because I love how San Francisco looks, and just the default is nice. What you can do is you can also change this, for example, if you want to use what's a nice font Georgia, you could use that, for example, and then everything would be looking like this. Like I said, I prefer the system font, and that's pretty much it with this feature. If you have other things, like if I search for an application and I say Command L, it usually just shows the search term itself. In the Powerpack, you can do a little bit more with large type, because you can, for example, go into a contact and large type the contact details of that contact. So the phone number or the email address, so that someone else can type it off or check if it's correct or something like that. If you are in the calculator, you can actually do the same thing and it would show the search result. If you don't want the search result be highlighted, but you instead want the search term itself, you would have to do Command Option or Command Alt and L, and then it would actually show what you were searching for. With that, we are actually at the end of the feature setting of Alfred, and in the free version, this is pretty much all you get. But I'm going to talk a little more about the appearance and how you can make the interface a little more minimalistic, and also about some of the advanced settings as well as the remote. And stay tuned to also learn a little more about the different features that are available in the Powerpack, like the Snippets and the Clipboard, which are totally worth it. So I will see you in the next coming segments about the appearance. So after we've talked about all the features, now let's make Alfred a little prettier. I personally prefer my designs very minimalistic and very nicely looking, and also in the dark theme, as you might have guessed based on the dark menu bar. As you see on the screen, you have a couple of choices here in terms of the design of the Alfred search. So you could, for example, choose Alfred Dark with this little turquoise color. There's also this classic, which is from the classic version of Alfred. Alfred macOS, which is a very nice and simple design. Then we have dark, which is just the black version of that. Frosty steel, which is a little translucent. And then you also have the notepad style, which I don't know who would want to choose that out of their own free will. I personally would go for the Alfred macOS dark theme. In the paid version, the Powerpack, you can actually add new themes, and you can also create your own. For example, you can change the fonts, you can change the font sizing, you can change the colors, and all of those things. But in the free version, you have the macOS dark theme, which in my personal opinion looks pretty decent, and it is something that I would choose if I were on the free version. On the paid version, you have a whole host of different themes to choose from. You can duplicate these themes and create your own, but you have also websites and the forum where other people are providing different kinds of themes, which you can choose from as well. But this is not where we are done yet. There's also this little tiny button down here to the left, which is the options button. And if you click there, you have a little more settings available. And the first things that I would do here, as always, is hide that hat in the Alfred window menu, and also hide the menu bar icon. I prefer to keep the results shortcuts, because if I want to make those invisible and I, for example, search for this Alfred image again, as you can see, I would have to pretty much guess which one is number 9 or 8 or whatever. So I like those shortcuts to be visible. As you can see now, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's really helpful. Then we can also make this more selected. So for example, if you want to have this, then you would only see the lower text stuff. I personally prefer to actually have those visible always, because it is helpful to know the file path, for example, for files, or more details for other search results. I prefer to have as many search results as I can visible. In this case, 9 is the maximum. To show an indicator when there's more rows obviously makes also sense. And to auto-highlight the top result is something that I definitely want, because I want to just hit enter and be able to go there straight away. Then we have the focusing mode, which is basically standard mode always, unless you are using a lot of Java applications or something like that. Apparently those can remap the behavior, so you might want to use compatibility mode in that case. But I use standard mode and it works fine all the time. The other thing on the right-hand side here is, where do you want to have Alfred? And in my personal opinion, I would want it in the center and not completely at the top, but one step down. So this is where it shows up then. You could also put it all the way to the top, but I actually have to say that I prefer to have a little bit of a distance to the upper screen corner. You can also move around this window. So if you drag and drop this window in the corners, you can actually put it somewhere else. But what you can do, like what would happen is if I close it and reopen it, it goes back to the center. But what I can also do is I can say save position when dragging the main window. So I would click this button and then I open Alfred and I take this window and I drag it, for example, here, and I'll leave it there. I close it and open it again. It would show up in that corner again. However, as you can see, it is relative because it jumps to certain snippet areas. So this closed, open becomes that. If I do it here, it becomes this. So if I kind of like, it remembers the position sort of, it jumps to a certain grid that is presented here on the screen. And as I said, I personally just prefer it right there in the center, right there at the top. Show Alfred on is also an interesting setting. It's where your mouse is, which is the active screen, so which is the selected screen. This setting with the default screen is the one that I prefer personally, because if you go into the display settings, for example, and you have an external monitor like I have, then you can see here that you can move the menu bar around. And this is the currently selected screen. So if I were to move this menu bar to the other screen, then the other screen would be the default screen. But I want to keep it there and just be on the screen that is my default. So let's close this again and keep it as default. So these are the free settings that you can make on the appearance side of things in the Alfred window. If you again have the Powerpack, you have a little more freedom in terms of what you can do with the design and the settings here. However, I have to say that the dark theme is already really powerful and it probably is enough for most everybody. But it's a nice to have to be able to even more freely customize this window in the paid version. Now let's go and have a look at the advanced settings for Alfred. On the advanced settings, I honestly have to say there's not much to do except for two settings that I like to adjust or use. A couple of things that I want to talk about is that if you have any search problems, you can clear the application cache and you can also rebuild the macOS metadata. This might be helpful if you have any struggles in searching for certain files, or to kind of like clear the cache and make it as fast as possible again by rebuilding it and maybe getting rid of some of the old stuff that's no longer needed. But it also can kind of like screw up your whole search result settings. So if you, for example, are used to things to being in the #1 spot because you already used it 100 times, then this might actually change that. Then you also have this history area. This is the one that I mentioned earlier. If you have this set up to store typed queries, then you can actually use the up and down arrows to go back in the search results, or like to go back in the search queries up to 20. You can also choose to only remember that within the 5 minutes. I personally just store the whole typed query for as long as it's there. The top search result keyword latching. This is the setting that I mentioned before. You want to have things that are important to you at the top. So if you use them a lot, Alfred will learn that and you can clear the knowledge for that and you can start from scratch basically. But it is something that I keep activated because it makes a lot of sense for Alfred to show me those things at the #1 spot that I use a lot and so be more efficient. Notifications are by default shown with the standard macOS notification system. If you have Do Not Disturb enabled, then those notifications obviously will not show up. But these are just a couple of very minutiae settings that you can make. You can say remove when clicked or not and stuff like that, but that's not something that I'm usually worried about. Network, if you use proxies, you might want to set this up. And then this hotkey thing is only important if you have the Powerpack. But on the right-hand side here, we actually have a setting that I tend to change. By default, this shows an empty selection. But if you use two different keyboard styles, for example, an American for international stuff and a German in my case, to use when you write long text with the special characters of whatever language you're typing, you might have set up two different keyboards in your system settings. So Alfred gives you the option to actually force one of those keyboards. And that's something that I find really powerful because I prefer to have Alfred dependable and reliable, just be the US keyboard and not switch around between the two keyboards that I might be using at any given time. So that's what I set it to, that it's forced to the US keyboard. You can also change those modifier keys, but it's really much easier to just remember them and once and just leave them as the default. And then there's the sync setting, which is only available for Powerpack users, but it actually is really helpful to be able to use multiple Macs with the same settings. As I've mentioned in the beginning of this class, you will miss Alfred immediately when it's not there and you actually have gotten to know on it for another system. So if you use two Macs, let's say you have an iMac and you have a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air or whatever you have. So this actually gives you the setting to synchronize the settings through Google Drive or Dropbox or any other cloud drive provider to actually be able to use those settings on two different computers. And you can go through the process that is mentioned down here. Again, this is only a feature that's available in the Powerpack, but it is very powerful if you have multiple computers and that's something that you want to be using. And with that, we are already done with the advanced features, and let's look a little bit in the remote. So now we are on the remote screen, and to be honest, this is not worth the money. There's a remote application in the iOS App Store, which is around $5. It kind of like goes depending on your currency. What you can do here is you have different system commands that you can set up, and you can also open preferences, use your bookmarks and stuff like that. Basically what they offer here is that on your iPhone or iPad, you can do certain aspects of your Mac's control. So for example, you can system control, you can make it sleep, empty the trash and stuff like that. And this screen here is basically what you see on your iOS device if you have this application installed. The only problem that I have with it is that it's not really as customizable as I wish it would be. This feature is a little more powerful if you have the Powerpack, because actually you can run scripts and also you can run terminal commands, workflow triggers, as well as the Clipboard snippets and also dispatch key combos. So you can actually dispatch a keyboard shortcut from your iOS device. But in general, this could be so much more powerful if it were, for example, featuring a remote keyboard and a remote touchpad as well. But at the moment, it is just triggering application launches, keyboard shortcuts in the Powerpack feature, opening bookmarks, folders, and preferences. And honestly, it's, in my opinion, not worth the $5 extra. If you have the Powerpack, this might be a different story. But unless you are on that path to have the Powerpack, this is definitely not something that I would recommend. It's nice to have if you really want to do that more, if you use your iOS device like that a lot. I don't, and so I'm not using this. From here, let's dive into the last closing of the different settings that are available in the free version. Now we've talked about the left-hand side of the menu, and now we have the right-hand side of the menu, which starts with a Powerpack activation screen. Again, this is something where you can either buy the Powerpack, you can upgrade if you have a version 2, and you can activate your Powerpack if you have a license, and you can just enter it right there. This is obviously not really that helpful, so it's just something to kind of like use if you want to buy the Powerpack. And again, in the next few segments, I'm actually going to talk about all the things that are possible with the Powerpack and whether or not that might make sense for you. So this is all that I have to say about this screen. The usage screen I already talked about a little bit. This screen just tells you how much you used Alfred in the past, what kind of actions you did. For example, you see I do a lot of hotkeys. I never use the remote. I don't use iTunes. I do a couple of actions. Navigation is something that I use. The clipboard is something that I use in bigger ways. And then I have the expansions and the general stuff. You can also tweet your usage to other people if you chose to do so. And it's just a little fun to kind of like know how much of an impact this application has made in your life. And also if you have used the free version, for example, you can see how many interactions you have had with this. And then maybe based on that, you can decide whether or not to do the upgrade to the Powerpack. The last two things are the help screen. This is actually just being helpful. So you can go to the forum, you can report a bug, or you can email them at info@alfredapp.com. So you get help for private issues and stuff like that. And the last one is the update screen, which is usually where you can get the updates from and you can see what changed in the last few versions. And I find that actually quite nice that you can go through and learn a little bit, because it is such a application that is so packed with different kinds of features in different areas that it is quite helpful to understand what they updated, to kind of like see if you might have a new feature available that you can get used to and stuff like that. This changelog actually includes the Powerpack only features as well as the free features, so they don't differentiate between that. So you might notice a update for a feature that you are actually not able to use if you are only on the free version. If you're using Alfred and it has an update available and you open Alfred, it sometimes shows a little drop down here. So you can just click that to restart and install the update. Other than that, it's just very simple. Just go into the update screen and click the button that's available, usually at the top right here. You can also choose whether or not it should automatically check and if you want to be included in the pre-release. So if I were to choose that, for example, then you see the pre-release updates available here as well. But as you can see, apparently I'm on the most recent pre-release build already. So that's nice. I hope this gave you a nice overview of all the features that are available in the free version of Alfred. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the community section of this class, and I'm making sure to answer to those questions as well. And also, please stay tuned for the last few videos on this segment about the Powerpack features, because honestly, my personal feeling when I went through these settings and preparing this class and using Alfred without the Powerpack for a couple of days, I have to say that it is a limitation in what's possible. Again, I'm not affiliated with the creators of Alfred, and I'm not making any commission on sales on the Powerpack. It's just something that I'm really passionate about, and it is definitely something that over a longer period of time is extremely valuable. If this overview was helpful for you, please review this class and give me a thumbs up or rate this class, and also leave some feedback for me so I might be able to make adjustments and also update this class. If you have any questions or feedback, please also use the community section to give me that feedback. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And now let's dive into the Powerpack features to give you a little bit of an overview of what's possible if you choose to make that upgrade, and I think it's definitely worth it. So as you probably know at this point, the Powerpack is actually what brings the power to Alfred, as the name suggests. And there's a couple of things that are incredibly powerful in this. And what makes the whole Powerpack worth the upgrade price is that the feature sets that are included in the Powerpack are usually separate applications in themselves. For example, the Clipboard history is an application that usually you might be able to find elsewhere. You might actually be able to find free versions or alternatives, but I found that the alternatives cost around $10 each. So if you want to just use that, of course, you can go ahead and run another application in the background, but with Alfred, you're already running one application. And if you just get the things like Clipboard history, you get snippets and text expansion, you get an iTunes controller and stuff like that. Those features are all packed into one runtime, and that means you don't have to run multiple programs at the same time on your computer in the background, so you're actually using less CPU power as well. Again, text expansion and Clipboard history, both of those are usually around $10 each. And if you go with a more advanced text expansion, it can go up to $36, I think, last time I checked. In my opinion, that ability to have all of those things in one application is already worth the trouble to kind of like be able to manage everything in one application, not having to run multiple at the same time, not having to synchronize multiple settings across multiple computers and stuff like that. And of course, there's other features like the workflows, which again, make the application worth it even more. I want to mention again, I'm not affiliated with the creators of Alfred, and also this class, or like this end segment of the class, will only give you an overview of what's possible with the Powerpack instead of going into detail, which is a class by itself. And then there's another class that I'm working on, which is specifically about the workflow side of things, because that area in itself is incredibly vast and broad. You can do so many things with workflows, and that's why I'm going to dedicate its own class for that. But let me give you a little bit of a peek what it looks like if you have the Alfred Powerpack. First, we start where we started before as well, because the features page, as you know already, has a lot of upgrades that are only available if you have the Powerpack. In this first screen, for example, you have the setup fallback search, where you can actually change which ones are available. In this case, we have the Google search, the Amazon, and the Wikipedia. You can add more searches based on the settings that you have set up in the web searches, for example, to display if you have a fallback, where it means there's nothing else that is found and you can just fall back onto one of those search results. It's not really something that I use a hell of a lot. It's definitely something that might be useful if you want to replace this default search, the Google search, for example. You want to replace that with DuckDuckGo or something similar. That's something that you can use this for. But in general, it's just a very simple, basic setting that gets added. The bigger changes come if you go into the file search. The file search is actually one of the areas that gets a lot of upgrades through the Powerpack. The basic settings here on the screen, they don't really change that much. But as you probably remember, the navigation and buffer features were completely blacked out in the feature of the free version. So in this case, we can do a lot more with file search. For example, I can hit this shortcut, which is new for the navigation stuff. The fuzzy matching is nice and like all that. But the previous path thingy, if I just open that, it opens a folder that I navigated before. So this can actually be really, really nice and helpful, where you can just use the delete key to go up one folder. You can use the enter key to go into the folder. And then you can use the enter key to select one of these files. For example, let's say I want to do something with this picture. I click enter and it would open. Now, what I can do as well is that I can use these keys here, or like these settings, to change how this behaves. So I can say I want to use the left and right arrow key, and if I hit enter, I actually want to open the folders in the Finder. So if I open this navigation thing again, now if I go left and right, I can navigate into the folder and outside of the folder. And I can also hit enter, and it would open the file. Now, those are already quite nice and useful. However, there's one thing that I do here that may be different to how other people use it. The previous path shortcut is something that I never really use. So I just delete that. I select this field and I hit the delete key. There's no shortcut anymore. And then I have this actions window here, which shows a lot of file actions that I can do with certain things. The reason why I don't use the previous path is because I just search the paths like this. So test folder, I hit enter, it opens, right? But what would happen if I search the folder and then I hit this different key, which is the file selection key, which usually is not this one. It's just that I have one password installed and that's the same shortcut, which would be Command, Option, and then the backslash, or like this different kind of slash. Now I'm going to remap that to Command, Option, and the normal slash. So now if I open the folder like so, I can navigate into it. I can also have the file selected, and then I can click the combination again, Command, Option, and slash, and then I'm on this action screen. The cool thing about this action screen is that I can reveal the file in the folder. I can also open with, so I can choose from the many applications that I have. For example, I want to do an HDR edit with something, I could open Aurora and have that right there. I can also go back to the files and email the file. This uses the mail functionality from macOS. So if you don't use the macOS email client, then this might not work. But the other powerful things is copy the path to the clipboard, open the file in the terminal, or like open the terminal in the folder where you are, and reveal the file. Now, there's one more very, very cool thing here that I actually and honestly don't use that much, but it's called the buffer. The buffer basically means that if you select a file on the screen like so, for example, I have this. Well, first, the action screen, you can also bring it up by just selecting something in the Finder, and you hit Command, Alt, and then do the same thing. And what I just found out is that there's actually a way to set this to just double the command button. So for example, if you're in Finder and you double command, so it would actually open this actions menu from Alfred by just double clicking the command, or like double tapping the command key. What you can do here is you can again browse in Alfred, and here there's something called the buffer. And the buffer is really nice and neat because you can select multiple files. In this case, for example, I have two files here and I want to select both of them to move them to a different location. So what I can do is I click up, and I can click Option and up with the first file, and then I click Option and up with the second file. And as you can see, both of these files are now added to this buffer up here. What I can do there is I can either Option and delete, which would clear all of the selections, or What I can also do with Alt or Option and back, I can remove the last selected file. But what I want to do is I want to move those files both to the desktop without being in a folder. So now I have selected both with Option and arrow down, which arrow down would select the file and then move to the next file. And if I just do arrow up, it would push it up into the buffer basically. Now what I can do with Option and the right arrow, it actually would show, okay, there's 2 files selected. You can see the files right here, and then I can do some things with them. I can open them, I can email them, I can move them, I can delete them. So all very nice things. I want to move them to the desktop. So what I'm doing here is I search for the desktop and I click enter. And as you can see in the Finder here and also on the desktop, the files were actually moved to the main screen. So once these files are moved, it all is back to normal. So this is a really neat feature, and it's one of those features that I mentioned before. It's really hard to grasp and get your bearings around that stuff. And yeah, it's just crazy how much you can do with this Powerpack feature if you get to know all the ins and outs. But this is basically it with this overview. The file search gets a lot of added bonus if you learn how to use all of these different actions and screens and stuff like that. Now onto the web search. The web search still uses the same system. You can still do the same things, but you also get a URL history, which is quite useful because, as I've mentioned before, you now can search for things that you've used in the past. For example, if I were to search for Unsplash, I get all the different photos that I've searched on Unsplash or used through Alfred on Unsplash. So like I copy and paste a link from somewhere, hit it into Alfred and just hit enter. It opens the browser and it remembers the URL so I can find it again if I choose to do so. This is a little nice feature that adds to the compatibility with URLs in Alfred, and you can open things very nicely and very easily. Then I've mentioned before, the contacts get a big upgrade because now what you can do is that you also not only can you search for contacts, you can also with the right arrow, no, with the enter key, you can open a contact and then you can see their details and you can copy them. So as you can see in the lower part of the window, you can actually see what you can do with these different things. For example, if you hit enter on a home page, it opens the URL. If you want to large type it, you can do Command L and it would be on the screen in large type. And if you want to copy it, you can do Command Z. Now the same thing with a phone number and so on. So you can do a lot of things here, and you can also email an address and like many things. It's really, really useful to just navigate contacts without having to open them at all. The email feature, something I don't really use. I jump into my email program and then do my emails there. And then there's like all kinds of custom abilities that you can do as well. From the contacts, we're going straight into the clipboard history. This is honestly one of the most amazing features of Alfred, and I think almost by itself worth the money. What you can do here is basically you can search through everything that you've copied while Alfred was open, and it gives you a history of all of those things. So if you enter the viewer hotkey, which is by default Command Option C, you will see this screen right here, and based on what you copied last, it will actually just be that list. You will have all the things available right there. And just in the good fashion of what Alfred can do, you can also search for things. So Ascendant, for example, you get that search result. If now you either Command C or you enter, like hit enter, this is again in your clipboard history and you can use it wherever you want. This is amazingly helpful, and it is really, really cool to use that when you want to copy and paste stuff left and right, and you also remember that you copied something recently and you don't have to go back to where you got it from. You can just use the clipboard history to get it right there really quickly. A couple very basic features or settings here is that I keep my plain text in 3 months storage. I keep my images and files in 24 hours because that again is something that increases the size of the clipboard history a lot if you add those all in there. A lot of the other features I want to go into detail in the other class, but this, as mentioned, is an incredibly powerful feature to speed up your workflow in general. From the clipboard, we jump into the snippets, which are kind of like integrated into each other. The snippets are text expansions. So if you, for example, have a text file open, in this case, I have a test snippet set up, which is a !T and then whatever keyword and then a space. So with that, I also have the automatically expand snippet keyword accepted. And then I can just do !TW space, and as you see, it automatically expands to the snippet that is right there. You can also go into the clipboard history and you go into the all snippets and you have those snippets available there as well. I personally use that a lot with my personal email address. So for example, I do something like CSW or my phone number CSP and stuff like that. And also, if you go into these settings and like look what you can do with snippets and their replaceables, you can actually do stuff like the time in there. You can have arithmetic, so you have 1 hour ago or in 10 years and stuff like that. You can also use the clipboard history in that. So you copy two things, you use a snippet, and both of those things are integrated into that snippet. This is again something I'm going to go into more details in the other class about this topic, but this tool by itself, there's others out there, for example, aText, there's also Text Expander and stuff like that. Those are amazing as well, but they cost money extra, and also they have to run in the background. So with all of this inside of Alfred, you have a lot of functionality right built in, and it's super, super simple to use, and there's practically like those things are just a no-brainer, and they're so helpful. From the snippets, we go over to the iTunes settings. The iTunes mini player that you can activate with Alfred is really helpful if you are an iTunes enthusiast. You have a huge library, or you are a subscriber to the iTunes library, the music library, and the Apple Music. Here you basically have a mini player that you can open, and then with a couple of keywords, you can play different albums, playlists, and stuff like that. You can switch to the next song and things like that. It's really kind of neat if you are an iTunes user. If you're a Spotify user, for example, there's also a workflow that can do a similar thing, but it's custom developed by a user of Alfred, and that's something that you can use as well, because with the Powerpack also comes the workflows. So that's an option if you are a Spotify user. But if you're an iTunes user, it's all integrated, they have it right there, and it is quite handy. Then we have the 1Password integration. If you enable this and you use 1Password as your main and default password manager, you actually are able to do something which is basically just enter 1P and then let's say Google, and then it would show you those passwords that are matching that passphrase, and you click enter and it automatically opens that website and it enters that data into the website, so you can just log in very easily. If you use both of these applications, they're really nicely integrated into each other, but if you use a different password manager, I'm not sure if that's also integrated or if you have to have, for example, a workflow to do something similar. With 1Password, it's just right there. Then we have the last one in the feature settings area, which is the terminal and shell. What you can do here is, for example, you can run a command and it's just going to be run in the home directory. For example, if I'm going to run a ls, it opens up the terminal and it does the ls command right there. There's also the ability to have different terminals in here. For example, you can use iterm2. That's a setting that you have to do with the custom, and there's a script on some website. And I'm going to go into more detail about this kind of stuff with the masterclass about the Powerpack, but this is all for the features in Alfred. And I think there's a whole lot of powerful ones, especially the clipboard and the snippets. Those two are no-brainers for me. They make the Powerpack worth it by themselves. But we're also going to go over the workflows for a little bit, and I give you a little bit of a bearing of what that can actually look like. Now we're onto one of the most powerful features in all of Alfred, which are the workflows. The workflows are basically automation features where you can program and you can do all kinds of inputs. So you can use keywords, you can use shortcuts, you can use file actions, and more. You can even integrate with the remote app that I mentioned before, and that makes the remote app actually a little bit more useful than it is without this. I have opened one simple to-do list example here. This is one that comes with Alfred by default in the example section here to kind of like learn how to work with the workflows. In this case, what you can see here is that practically without any programming, someone has created a workflow where you can add a to-do list all within Alfred without the need to leave that application, and it stores the to-dos in files and actually manages them there. The other things that are possible here, if you go into the suggestions, for example, is Google suggestions. If I open this, for example, this workflow gives you inline results for Google, helping you find what you want quicker. So one example is if I now open this, I go G and then I search for Alfred, and it actually would suggest what the search results would show up on Google itself. And that is all achieved by using this little bit of code right here. The features that are possible with workflows are incredibly vast, and there's a whole library on packle.com, and there you can use all kinds of features and all kinds of workflows that other people have created, as well as the forum has a lot of those too. This is something that will be its own class on Skillshare soon, and I'm going to go into more details in terms of like how I create my own shortcuts and what I use my shortcuts for, how I manage them, and which ones I use from others on a daily basis to make my life easier. This honestly is an automation genius thing. Like it's so powerful. You can do so many things with it, and I just love it. And as I've mentioned, I will go into more detail. If you want to learn a little more about the workflows and what they can do for you, you can have a look on my YouTube channel. There I have a video where I talk about my most used workflows in Alfred. Some of those are time zone conversion, it's a currency conversion, it's HTML color conversions between different things. And by this point, I actually have a lot more self-programmed ones where I can do certain file transfers, where I can automatically make a file from one type to another and convert them between each other. And I also do a lot of things like opening in specific applications that I use a lot with the open with in the file actions, for example. So there's a lot you can do here, and it's way too much to go into details about this right here. And that's why I'm going to create its own class just about these workflows. Now to the Design and Appearance tab. What I had talked about earlier, when you are using the Alfred version that is for free, you can just use the ones that are here. What you can do if you have the Powerpack, you can actually duplicate a theme. And for example, let's name it Spiegel.io, and it's by Chris. And I save that, and then I have my own version of this. And as you can see, I have theme and fonts, and I can change them. So now if I go here, for example, as you can see, the result text, it's showing that in the lower part of the screen. The result text is system, drag up and down for change. So if I hold this and I go up and down, you can see I'm actually changing between the different fonts that are available. I personally think that it's not necessarily the best way to switch through fonts, but it's also not the worst because you actually can see them straight away. You can also right click and you can just change them like that. So in this case, for example, let's change this to System Light and this to the normal system font. And so you can make those adjustments one by one. It's really powerful. It's really nice. You can also do the same thing with fonts. So you can, for example, go here and you can make this red tone. Let's see if that works. There you go. And just make all kinds of adjustments to get something crazy looking. It also has the opacity, so you can make it transparent and choose what you want to look like. It's really nice to be able to completely customize this design. And there's also on Packle, as well as the forum, different designs that you can choose from that others have created. It's a really neat feature to make this a little more your own and design it however you want. Obviously, this is not really a design that I want to keep, so I'm just going to delete it because it looks hideous. And I'm going to go back to the Alfred Alfred dark theme. The advanced features feature the synchronization, so that's possible with this. It's really nice that you can synchronize between different computers, and with the Powerpack, that becomes an availability as well. Now that we have a wrap with everything that the Powerpack has to offer as well, I hope you have a better understanding at what this can bring to you if you choose to do that upgrade. Again, I want to stress this point. I'm not affiliated with the creators of Alfred. I'm just a user that loves the application and wants to share that information with you. I hope not only did you understand what the Powerpack has to offer, but also what you can already do in the free version. There's a lot of things that you can accomplish with the free version, where you can do the web searches, you can have the access to your bookmarks, you can just enter a URL and open it in your browser, or just file search in itself is already incredibly powerful, especially if you want to do special things like searching inside of files or just the file names. And then, of course, the standard one is the launching applications by just hitting Command Space and typing the name of the application. You don't have to clutter your dock to put all of your applications in there. You can just do that with Alfred, and it's so much faster than with Spotlight. At least that's my personal experience. I am in the process of creating more classes like this, about Alfred, but also about other things. So please subscribe to this profile on Skillshare so you are notified whenever I launch a new class around productivity or whatever comes my way. If you have any feedback, please feel free to either use the community section or use the feedback section to write a review and give me a rating about this class. I would greatly appreciate that and hope that you liked it and leave a positive one. But if that's not the case, please feel free to give me feedback so I can improve this class and also improve my future classes based on that. So with that being said, I hope you have a lot of fun with Alfred and this was helpful. I have one more video for you where you can learn a little more, where you can find stuff about me and what I create on a daily basis, where Alfred always helps me to do the job. So let's jump right into that last video. Before you go, I would like to introduce a couple of places where you can find out more about me and also learn a little about what I do on a daily basis. My name is Chris Spiegel and my website is chrisspiegel.com. I run a podcast YouTube channel, I'm on Instagram, and also I'm a programmer at heart that does all kinds of little creations here and there. Sometimes that's even Alfred workflows. Now I'm a creator at heart. I do photos, I do videos, and I do programming. Those are the domains that I am mainly focused on, maybe sometimes even a podcast. I have over 200 videos on my YouTube channel, which you can find on chrisspiegel.com/YouTube, or you just go to the website itself and you will find that information there as well. It's simply click there. You can also find what gear I use, my consulting work, as well as the podcast and articles if I write some. Those are all stored on my website and you can go there to learn more. If you want to learn more about these classes or stay up to date with these classes on Skillshare, please feel free to follow my Skillshare profile so you are up to date, and whenever I add a new class, you will get an email about that. Generally, I take photos on my travels, put them on Instagram. I create videos about life and technical topics, as well as other explorations on my YouTube channel, and I would love for you to connect on any of those platforms with me. You can find any and all of these resources at my website, chrisspiegel.com, and it will also be linked in the description of this class. I'm looking forward to connecting with you either on a personal level, on a travel level, on my videos, or for consulting work if you want to have more one-on-one kind of work to kind of like get tips and tricks in terms of productivity, online business, or publishing what you want on the internet. I'm here for all of those things, and I'm looking forward to connect with anyone who is excited to get something out there as well. This is for the doers, the people that are excited about something, that want to accomplish more in their lives and create every single day and make something out of life that is better than what it was yesterday. With all of these things being said, I hope this was a helpful class for you. I'm looking forward to your feedback, and I will see you in my next class. Bye-bye, and until next time. Ciao.